see Verlander, one of 11 pitchers all-time to win 3+ Cy Young awards, the latter two in a Stros uniform. Alcantara does it for the first time as a Marlins player ever. And how about this? Second time both Cy Young winners unanimous back in '68. It was Denny McLain and Bob Gibson. Verlander, of course, claiming a World Series title as well. So to get some insight, let's bring in our own World Series champ. He's former Marlins president David Samson. And David, 175 on the ERA. I might mention he's 39 years old, coming off Tommy John, having not thrown one pitch the prior season. How much more impressive does that make the season that was for Justin Verlander?
We kept waiting inside the industry for him not to be as dominant as he was, start after start after start, and he seemed to get stronger throughout the regular season, because to have an ERA the way he did and to do it for a team that is winning and getting ready to compete for a World Series, you cannot underestimate the pressure that is. And I'm not taking anything away from Sandy, but the Marlins weren't playing for anything for much of the year. So when I look at what Justin did, it truly is remarkable, and you touched on it. He pitched 0 innings last season. To go from 0 to the Cy Young at 39, I've never seen anything like it in my career. And on top of that, he's a free agent now. So anything that could have gone right for Justin Verlander went right for him this year, and he now gets to cash in, and he gets a ring on his finger.
Great segue, David, because he is hitting free agency at the age of 39. He's said to want a Max Scherzer-type contract. Oh, by the way, that was 3 for $130. That's better than $43 million a year with opt-outs. Now, if you're handling the negotiations on the other side for said team, how do you handle Verlander's free agency?
So I have to look at history. And one thing that owners and presidents don't do very well is look at history when they're signing free agents, because they always assume that the player they want, it's going to be different. There are not very many pitchers who are performing at the level Verlander is at 39. There's fewer at 40, even fewer than that at 41. Could Justin Verlander be Nolan Ryan? That's the bet. I'm not saying Roger Clemens. I'm definitely not saying Roger Clemens, but I am saying Nolan Ryan. So as an owner, you've got to say, this is Nolan Ryan, and he's not going to lose velocity, because it's not like he's going to turn into Greg Maddux and start throwing 88 and be able to do it with command and changing planes the way it worked with Greg Maddux. So 3 years is way too many. It is unlikely that he will have a better year next year than he had this year. But him asking for Scherzer money makes sense, because there's enough teams who need starting pitching that they believe that bringing him on your team, bolstering their rotation, if you can weaken the Astros and strengthen your team, maybe you've got a chance.
Makes total sense right there, thinking with a clear thought in mind there. Now, Alcantara, hey, listen, you got connection, obviously, to the Marlins organization. He's the first ever from that franchise to win a Cy Young award. What do you suppose that means for this organization, having a pitcher reach the highest honor there is for a mound man?
So we used to promote, here's how it worked over the 18 years. It's very simple. When you have a winning record, you talk about winning on the field. When you don't have a winning record, you talk about individual accomplishments. You talk about Gold Gloves or Silver Sluggers or MVPs or Cy Young, but you really want to win on the field. And if I'm the president of the Marlins, I would trade every individual award that a player's gotten for another ring after what we got in '97 and '03 as a franchise. That said, if you look back at the history of the Marlins, just in my time, the pitching we had from Josh Beckett all the way to Josh Johnson to Dontrelle Willis. How about Jose Fernandez? So many good pitchers. It's such an honor that Sandy got this, but the domination that he had, it's old school. We're talking about 200-plus innings, 6 complete games. You just don't see that anymore. And next year's a big year. Remember, he signed long-term. The Marlins have him. But if they don't add offense, they're just wasting his pitching years.
You another great segue right there, because you just touched on it. He is a throwback pitcher, a pitcher that many times finishes what he starts, or at least is not a 6-inning pitcher. Again, 6 complete games this past season. 228 and 2/3 innings, a 228 earned run average, tops and whip. When you look at him and watch him pitch, because you're a fan of the game still. You watch these games on a regular basis. He gets stronger as the game goes along many times. How much more impressive does that make this season that was? Because you're not seeing a lot of pitchers doing what he just did this past season.
It is so important when you are building your rotation. They're called innings guys. What we used to have is fourth or fifth starters. You want them to try to get you as many innings as possible, get you into the fifth or sixth inning. But your top of the rotation guys, of which Sandy is an ace, they're supposed to get you 7, 8, or 9 innings every start, because you want your bullpen to get a break at least once every 5 days. You want losing streaks to be stopped so you can't lose more than 4 in a row. And you want winning streaks to be continued if you've gotten winning down in your rotation. So the role of the ace is so important. And what Sandy's able to do by going deep into games, it's so helpful to an organization. All of that said, Justin Verlander has a ring on his finger, not because he won the Cy Young, because he was part of a great team. They were great offensively, defensively, great pitching, bullpen starting. The reason Sandy does not have a ring and the Marlins do not have playoff appearances other than COVID-shortened season is they don't have the other pieces in place, and that's what they're going to be focusing on this offseason.
As we stay in the National League, the MVP coming Thursday in both respective leagues. Let's start in the senior circuit, where players like Paul Goldschmidt and Freddie Freeman head the pack there. It's interesting because the Cardinals' 2 cornermen came via trades, talking about Arenado and Goldschmidt. When you watch Goldschmidt play, what comes to mind for you?
He's got everything you want when you're building a team. You want him in the middle of your lineup. You want him plus defensively. You want him in the clubhouse as a leader. You want his veteran presence. You want his production, and you want his long-term productivity. And the Cardinals have it all. The type of season he put together, that Cardinal team, when you look at their individual players and some of their pitching staff, there's no surprise that they were able to come and win that Central Division. They just were not able to get it done in the playoffs, which, as you know, can be difficult. But when you think about what Goldschmidt means to that team, and you mentioned the corners, generally you try to build your team up the middle. You try to be strong at catcher, short, second, center field. That's called building your team up the middle. But if you don't have, you don't have, and then you build corners out, catcher, first, third, and then the corner outfield positions. And the Cardinals have just done a terrific job when you think about what they had with Molina, who's now going to retire. Big question mark what they'll do there. But the fact that you have returning Arenado and Goldschmidt on long-term deals is very, very good for the Cardinals.
Yeah, those are 2 terrific trades for St. Louis. And then there's Aaron Judge, the odds-on favorite, when odds were still connected to this, to be AL MVP. You know what we just went through with the season that was. He breaks a single-season home run record with 62. What to you is the lasting image of this season for Aaron Judge?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, because for me, the lasting image is the fact that the Houston Astros swept them 4-0 in the League Championship Series, and it was another season without making the World Series. Yep. There's no question Aaron Judge had a great year. His chase to 62 was exciting. Breaking in at bats during college football games. I'm in. It's exciting. I do want to mention, because I will not let this segment pass, the person who he's against, Shohei Ohtani, finished 4th in the Cy Young. So we're talking about a player that is going to finish 4th in the Cy Young and 2nd in the MVP, although I'm still voting for Ohtani, because anyone who finishes 4th in Cy Young and is an MVP candidate ought to be the MVP. But for me, Aaron Judge, he's at the height. He's, again, going into free agency, coming off a year that is very unlikely to be repeated, because think about it, it's history what he did, hitting 62 home runs. That said, there's going to be a team out there who will think that that will be the norm for Aaron Judge, whereas it really isn't.
You know, David, you keep doing this. You keep kind of throwing the breadcrumbs out for the next question, and I'm going to put you back in that front office seat one more time. You're dealing with Aaron Judge and his camp across the table. How do you handle this negotiation, whether you're the Yankees or another team trying to lure him away from the Big Apple?
The first thing is, if I'm Hal Steinbrenner, I'm making it very clear to Aaron Judge that I'm not here to be your stalking horse. I'm not making a bid for you and having you run it around to the Giants or the Cubs or the Dodgers or any other team. I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not colluding with anyone, but don't use me that way. Number 2, we offered you $213. You turned it down. You bet on yourself. I'm tipping my cap. All we're negotiating right now is what your performance this year did and what the vigorish will be over the 213. That's the negotiation. You're still 31 years old. We're still not talking about 8 years or 10 years or the Robinson Cano deal or the Albert Pujols deal. Let's just talk about that difference over 213. We'd like to have you back. And to me, Aaron, we're going to show you that your MVP year was worth about $87 million. We're happy to go to $300 million, not a penny more. Let me know. The deadline is a week from today. Now, you're saying that's harsh. I get it. But the problem is when you're not that way with the players, what they do is they shop your offer, and you're stuck not being able to figure out the rest of your team because you don't know whether a huge part of your payroll is used by that player or whether you have to get a new right fielder or a new pitcher or whatever the position is. So you have to take control when you're building your roster.
All right, he's former Marlins president, a two-time World Series champ, David Samson. We'll see how it plays out, David, with Judge and the New York Yankees, or perhaps another team. Here's what it looks like. The honors in the postseason that have come down the pike. The Rookie of the Year, Julio Rodriguez and Michael Harris II. Manager of the Year, Terry Francona and Buck Showalter. A couple of old schoolers claiming that honor. And then you have old school and new school for the Cy Young. Justin Verlander, Sandy Alcantara, both unanimous choices. And again, come Thursday, it's MVP in each respective league. Hey, you want more David Samson? You should. It's Nothing Personal with David Samson, his podcast. You can a unique perspective on all things sports from a front office perspective and beyond. It's not just baseball. It's all things sports with David Samson.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.